Hello and welcome back to Lady Dynamite Creates. I'm Tiffany, and if you've been hanging around a while, you might remember Minerva, the fierce forest guardian I made a couple of years ago. In that video, I teased the idea of giving her a sister with flowing skirts and soft pastel vibes. Well, guess what? Today's the day we're finally bringing her to life. For my base doll, I'm using Caran D'ache. I only have one in my stash, but her delicate features and pale coloring are perfect for the vision I've got in mind. Like Minerva, she'll have those awesome Unguli grade legs, so I'm rating my spare parts for some joints and these Gundam figure joints for an articulated ankle hoof situation. I'm too excited to wait, let's dive in. First up, removing her gloriously gross hair and saying goodbye to the factory paint. Once the paint was off, I noticed a little stain on her cheek, plus some yellowing from glue seepage. Classic doll problems, right? I slapped on some RemovesZit and popped her head into the UV chamber for a nice little stain-busting sunbathing. Much better. The stains are barely visible now. Now for something I've never tried before, slow shrinking the head. I've done the fast version and let's just say, not a fan of those results, but Catmeleon swears by the slow method, so I'm following her advice. I mixed up a 9:1 ratio acetone to water solution, dropped the head in and let it sit for 2 days. After 48 hours in the shrink spa and a 24-hour drying break, the difference in size is totally noticeable. Now for the fun part, body mods. I start with the head by snipping off her ears. I'm going to reposition them onto the sides, and I'm going to add some 3D printed horns I designed. I'll mark out where I want everything to go. I drill 2 small holes into her head for the armature wires and then make one larger hole into the horn. I shaped the hole in the horn a bit conically so both wires would fit snugly inside. I feed the wires through the holes and out the neck opening, knot the ends, and pull them tight so they sit securely inside. Then I twist the wires together, trim the excess, and superglue the horns in place. Quick tip! Softer wire works best here. Stiff wire can tear up the vinyl when you're twisting. Here she is with all of the head mods done. Ears are repositioned, horns are on, and it's all coming together. And for a little continuity magic, I'm using Laguna's arms this time. Why? You'll find out later. But for now, I need to carefully remove her fins and the webbing between her fingers. A super sharp X-Acto blade does the trick, and I make sure nobody, doll or human, loses a finger in the process. The cuts are a little rough, but nothing a bit of sanding can't fix. Finally, on to the body. First step, chopping her up. With love, of course. I've already marked the spots where I need to cut, so it's time to slice and dice. Time to start adding some joints. First up, the hooves. I drill a hole into the top of the hoof and another into the bottom of the shin, then pop in a Gundam joint to create some sweet ankle articulation. Gotta love those graceful posable ballerina goat legs, right? So, I am really freaking defeated. After how much I have struggled with making this armature and getting it ready to start actually sculpting and building up epoxy, I put some clear 2-part epoxy on it to strengthen those joints so that they were sturdy when I sculpted with them with epoxy sculpts, and it never cured. I don't know if I just got a bad batch, because I am 100% positive it was thoroughly mixed and equal proportions. I don't know what happened. But it's been like 4 hours and it's still tacky to the touch. And I'm gutted. I honestly don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'm just going to sit for a few days and figure out what direction I'm going to take with it, because I can't use this. So, after a couple of days of wallowing in self-pity, we've all been there, I came up with a backup plan. I grabbed a spare Laguna body, and inspired by Enchanterium's Cyberpunk Ram, I dove back into the mod zone. Sure, she's not getting the fancy extra joints I originally dreamed of, but we're rolling with the punches and chasing those wins. I cut halfway into her calves, bent them into shape, and used hot glue to lock it all in place. Epoxy glue just has not been playing nice lately, so I'm switching it up. With those simpler bends done, I can finally start building up details and sculpting with Epoxy Sculpt. I've got to send a big thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters. You make this magical little corner of creativity possible, and I'm so lucky to have this wonderful crew to share my art and chaos with. Angel Book Walter, Awkward Bird, B. Burnett, Cozy Cat, Deborah Sweeney, Jay Zur, Stephanie L., Dancing Johari, Delicious, Bex Mini Studio, Booniwa, Ellen Daria, Kitsy, Oak Magpie, Tara N. Many sculpting and sanding sessions later, behold, her legs are done, and I'm kind of obsessed. The little tufts of hair around her hooves, they're giving me last unicorn vibes, and I love it. Now let's dress this ethereal queen. She needs dreamy, layered, flowing skirts. Tulle on tulle on tulle. I've already cut the pattern pieces, so the train flares out beautifully, but that does mean that I've got a side seam to deal with. Sewing tulle with invisible thread is a journey. So to keep my machine from chewing it up, I start each seam with some regular fabric as a buffer. I also want to avoid bulky seams since there'll be so many layers, so I'm butting the pieces up together and zigzag stitching along the edge. It gives this cool encapsulated effect, and I really like it. All the skirt layers are ready and looking so soft and dreamy. I stack them and carefully attach everything to a ribbon waistband for the light flowing look. With the skirt assembled, it's time for the main attraction, floral embroidery. I found this stunning embroidery piece buried in my stash, and it practically begged to be part of this look. I marked out where I need to trim it to fit on the skirts, and I carefully cut it down. Now that it's trimmed and ready, I pin it in place and take it to the machine. Some parts, like the pearls and those beautiful 3D flowers, will need to be hand sewn, but I let the machine handle what it can. For the bodice, I'm keeping the shape nice and simple so that the embroidery can really shine. I cut 2 pattern pieces of the tulle and stitched them together along the armholes and neckline. Now comes the fiddly part, turning it right side out. The shoulder channels are tiny, so I grab a hook, slide it in between the layers, and gently pull the fabric through. It's slow going, but totally worth it to avoid tearing the delicate tulle. A quick press with the iron makes everything behave much better. Then I line up the front and back side seams, right sides together, and stitch them all in one go, matching the layers up at the armholes. To finish the bottom edge, I bring the 2 hem ends together with the right sides facing and sew a straight line across it to close it up. Next, I mark the center back, zigzagging the edges to keep things neat, and then I add my closure, some lovely loop trim that'll let me lace up the back like a corset. Fancy and functional. Now I have the base of the top finished, and I really love how the lacing turned out. It looks beautiful. I have some floral embroidery pieces I set aside just for this, so I start pinning them in place to see what layout looks best. Once I'm happy, I dive into the hand sewing. It's slow, but I promise it's worth it. And here's the finished bodice. I adore how it turned out. That embroidery really brings it to life, and yep, even the dreaded hand sewing was totally worth it. Now it's time to give those body mods some color. I mixed up a custom shade to match Laguna's body and start layering on with my airbrush. I've gotten pretty good at color matching, and I'm really happy with how seamlessly this blends in. With the body painted, I move on to the horns. I knew there would be some overspray, so I saved them for last. I brushed on a creamy buff base, then dry brushed on some soft peachy pinks at the tips to create a pretty gradient. And a quick side note, I'm using new brushes and I love them. They apply like a dream. I'll pop a link below in case you want to check them out. While I had the pink out, I added a few accents to the body for a cohesive look. A little dry brushing with white brings out the high points of the sculpt, and I follow that with some pastel shading to add some depth to the recesses. It's all about creating that dimension. Face up time! I laid out all the products I used for this transformation. There's a full list in the description if you want to see every brush, pastel, and pencil I reached for. First, I prepped her head with 3 layers of Mr. Superclear UV Cut Flat and jumped right in. This is one of my favorite parts of the whole process. It's where everything really starts to come alive. I've already done a little contouring with the airbrush earlier to give me a nice head start. Since I'm using a Laguna body and a Caran D'ache head, I needed to tie them together a bit color-wise. I brought some of Laguna's signature blue into the edges of her face, and I kept the center soft and white with a blush of pink. Now, this doll has been living in my mind for so long. She was actually the original concept I had for when I started Minerva. A dreamy, delicate forest goddess wrapped in layers of soft fabric and floral details. But once I added all the fluffy fur to Minerva's legs, yeah, that vibe completely shifted. The fabrics didn't hang right anymore and clung awkwardly to the fur, and instead of ethereal, she felt weighted down and clunky. It just didn't work. So I pivoted. Out went the flowing skirts, and in came the armor, and honestly, I love where Minerva landed. She became this grounded, powerful essence, but more guardian than goddess. I ended up using a hyaline as a base for her and leaned into deep earthy tones that gave her a rich, grounded aesthetic. Looking back, I think even if I hadn't run into those design hiccups, the colors I originally had in mind wouldn't have fit her the way they do for Silvanae. Speaking of, yes, her name is Silvanae, the forest goddess. I wanted to keep the Roman mythology influences I started with Minerva, and since Silvanus was the name of the Roman god of forest, I just gave his name a feminine twist. It felt elegant, ancient, and perfect for this new ethereal goddess. And back to what I was saying. She's delicate where Minerva is strong, dreamy where Minerva is fierce. The pastels and the hint of magic in her palette, it all came together in a way that just clicked. I love how Laguna's natural coloring helped tie the whole design together. It gave me the perfect canvas to play with fantasy shades. Everything feels soft, enchanted, and exactly like the doll I wanted to make all those years ago. We're in the home stretch of this face up, and I'm loving how she's coming together. Once I added in her catch lights, I felt like she needed something a little more. So I gave her a few delicate beauty marks and a soft dusting of shimmery mica powder. Because what's a forest goddess without a little extra sparkle, right? The colors are dancing beautifully together. I just love her. With her final layers of Mr. Super Clear all set in, I decided to give her horns and hooves a glossy finish using UV top coat. Just a little shine to make those details pop. Now let's talk about her hair because wow, these pastel Teeswater locks from Jolly Felt Dolls have been waiting oh so patiently in my stash for their moment in the spotlight, and this was it. I turned them into wefts and started gluing them on one row at a time, working my way up the back of her head. For the front wefts, I folded and tucked them just right so the tops are hidden. And just like that, Silvanae is complete. I'm seriously over the moon about how she turned out. She's soft, dreamy, and full of that forest goddess energy I've been imagining for so long. She's already found her forever home. One of my amazing Patreon supporters took advantage of the early offering perk and scooped her up the moment she was finished. But I do have a few other dolls currently available over in my Etsy shop if you're on the hunt for a new magical friend. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and following along with this creative adventure. Your support, comments, likes, and shares mean the absolute world, and you're always a huge part of what keeps the magic flowing around here. Until next time, always be creating.